You are listening to the Billy Dees podcast. We are waiting just a minute for everyone to engage the live stream. Remember, you can find the Billy Dees podcast on your favorite platform.
Well, hello, everyone. And for those of you that are checking in on social media, namely X, welcome. If you're new here, we give just a moment for everyone to lock on to all the live streams. We're on, I'm not sure how many, about a half a dozen live streams. And what we do here is we kind of record the podcast that you hear on on the platforms separately, and we kind of let the audience come in and join us for that. So just before we begin, just want to introduce you to Shaman. How's it going, Shaman? Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Billy. I'm delighted to be here. Everything's going great. Lots going on in the news.
Absolutely, there sure is. We're going to cover some of that. And by the way, next Thursday, I believe is the debate, and I believe that's on at 9. So we can maybe do a little preview of that. So that should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
It's going to be interesting. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pause it just a moment and begin the podcast. Thank you. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. If you are new here, first of all, I'm so glad that you found us. We are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. You can find the Billy Dees podcast anywhere podcasts are found. We are on Thursday nights. We do commentary, and we also happen to do that live on X, and it's on a lot of other platforms as well, but X is kind of where we focus, so we call it Live on X. With me is my co-host, Shamanisis. Shaman, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Billy. Delighted to be here.
It's always delightful to have you. A lot to talk about, as as we kind of talked about. It's an interesting time for sure. Yeah. I always say we pay attention to a lot of the comments that we get. And I got a rash of comments about my flippantness, I guess, of Joe Biden's faux pas. And I want to clarify again that I don't necessarily find these comedic. I find them scary.
Sad.
And I will give some credence to some of the things that came out. The term that was used, the term that was used this past week was cheap fakes. And this was by Karine Jean-Pierre, who is the White House press spokesperson. And we're going to play that clip. And before this starts, let me just say that I actually like her. I believe she has a very tough job, putting a positive spin on some of the things the Biden administration does. And I'm not critical of her at all. She has a very, very tough job. So with that being said, let me play this clip about cheap fakes, and I'll tell you ahead of time that she's not entirely wrong. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, and I think you all have called this the cheap fakes video, and that's exactly what they are. They are cheap fakes video. They are done in bad faith, and some of your news organization have been very clear, have stressed that these the right wing critics of the president have a credibility problem because of the fact checkers have repeatedly caught them pushing misinformation, disinformation, and so we see this, and this is something coming from your part of the world, calling them cheap fakes and misinformation. And I'll quote the Washington Post, where they wrote about this, and they said how Republicans use misleading videos to attack Biden in a 24-hour period. And to their credit, we have a conservative Washington Examiner did call them out as well, calling out the New York Post.
Like I said, she's not entirely wrong, and I'll tell you where she's. And when I did play some of these videos, I did note, for example, when he was at the airfield with the parachuters coming in, and he went to the left, and it appeared that he was just wandering off. He was, in my opinion, straying from the group who were going to formally address the crowd or make a statement. But he wasn't just like wandering off aimlessly. He went off to talk to a parachuter that was in the off camera. So when you look at this, it looks like, well, he was just wandering around aimlessly without any purpose in the world. But here again, I want to qualify this. A child might wander off from an event to go pet a dog. That doesn't mean that that child should be wandering off at that moment.
Right.
But she's right about that. The other thing that, and I pointed this out when we played the video of him attempting to sit down. The one angle of that video, it appeared that there was no chair there, and it turns out there was a chair there. But here again, to be entirely thorough, it was awkward. It was awkward. It was awkward. So I don't deny that they are putting, as bad as it is, they are making every little movement of his seem as bad as possible. And I don't like that being done with President Biden. I don't like it being done with Trump. I don't like it being done with Obama, Clinton, whoever. I don't believe that you should be contorting things, and worse yet, deep faking them, which so far I haven't run into too much of that. There have been some people do it on social media, of course, because they'll do anything, but I haven't seen what you might call legitimate news organizations deep faking things. Shaman, before we get into some of the clips that I have about this, do you want to talk a little bit? Have you noticed that, or am I wrong?
Yeah.
Okay.
So a few things that come to mind. I'm not a huge fan of her just energetically, because I see as someone who's spent 20 something years in PR what she's not saying. The terminology deep fakes, and to keep throwing that around when a lot of these videos are not actually fake. They may be shown from a specific angle, but you know what? The president of the United States shouldn't look like that from any angle, and it shouldn't sound like that. And I'm not like what I'd say as a fan of Biden. I have a lot of respect for the office of the president, but foreign countries are having a field day with what's going on, and I think it's delusional at this point to label them deep fakes, or is to dismiss the fact that a lot of it's actually authentic and that spin, and to claim that it's the Republican. Yeah, I'm sure some of it is the Republicans, but a lot of people that have nothing to do with American politics are pulling these clips up and sharing them to show what's happened to America.
Yeah.
And it's delusional at this point for Democrats to continue to expect the rest of the world to pretend that they can't see what anyone can see. And I paid a lot of dues to share my real opinion, and I believe he's showing signs of dementia or something in that variety. It's very obvious. So, honestly, I'm sick of all of them, because I can't stand the fact that they won't lead with some level of honesty. And to not acknowledge that he's having trouble is to lie to the American people. I don't care what your job role is.
I don't like conservative outlets or any outlet distorting what's already bad enough, because it lends credence to what I was faced with this past week with a lot of Democrats. It seems like the new thing to do now. One of the things that really made me nervous about the term fake news when it first came out was I knew it was going to mean more than just news that isn't accurate. It was going to be news that you didn't agree with or didn't like was going to get labeled fake news.
And it's not just that. I keep in mind, and I think a lot of people don't understand this, I would not put it past people in their own party to generate videos, deep fake videos of people within their own party, just so that they can point the finger like it. That's how nasty politics gets, especially something as big as the presidential election.
Absolutely. And I was faced with, I don't know how to say this nicely, with some of my Democratic friends who are in a false reality. They are actually telling me that Biden is in great shape, that he's in better shape than Trump, intellectually and mentally and physically. And he's just ready to go. Now, I want to be very clear here about Trump too. Now, Trump has slipped as well, but he is not what we're talking about. And one of the things I really can't stand, and I think liberals do this more than conservatives, are what I call whataboutisms. You start talking about Biden and, well, what about Trump? All right, that's a way of deflecting. I don't care who President Biden is running against. What I am talking about, talk about the Democrats and President Biden, is the Democrats are putting this person forward as the best choice that they've got to represent the country. It doesn't matter who he's running against. I don't care if he's running against Vlad the Impaler. Okay. This is the guy that they say is, better than anyone suited to run the country. I'm going to play this clip. This is visual, so I'm going to describe it. I'll let, of course, Shaman can comment on it too. This was President Biden, and I'm going to roll this tape back just a little bit. There we go. I'm going to roll this. Here he is. He's walking along, and he's getting into the presidential limousine. I'm sure it's kind of like a very heavy-duty SUV. And as you can see here, he just has a hard time getting in. I mean, this is like going to the old folks' home and picking up Grandpa and taking him for a ride. And here again, I am not saying this to be mean. Okay, this is if should this man be flying a 747? Okay, absolutely not. Well, but why should he be running the country?
Well, that's the thing that yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm going to play one more here real quick. This is President Biden at the Jimmy Kimmel hosted Democratic fundraiser. He's looking out over the crowd. Now, you could say in the heat of the moment, you're engulfed with the crowd or whatever, but President Obama grabs him kind of by the wrist and guides him out. This is the next part that really, where he kind of puts his arm around him and guides him off the stage. It looks almost like he's walking somebody who is at the old folks' home. And here again, I'm not, this isn't being mean. I think the President Biden at this point should be retiring, enjoying the rest of his years in ease and comfort. And we've talked about this before. The lack of facing reality, and conservatives do this as well.
Yeah.
But the Democrats right now, it seems to be the strategy is with this press conference at the White House, the strategy is there's nothing wrong here. Everything's fine.
Which I think is actually one of the things. Like a lot of people think it's Biden or it's a lack of person, but I think one of the biggest things actually hurting the Democratic Party's desires is the fact that they continue to lie on an epic scale, and the huge majority of people who were undecided can't sit between that lie and the lie that they didn't weaponize the justice system against Trump. That's what sends so many people running in the other direction. It's actually costing them the election.
Yes. It seems like the strategy is, which I think is a slap in the face to many Americans. Nothing wrong here. This is all a conspiracy. This is all doctored video. This is all the mean-spirited conservative media. President Biden is in great shape. Yeah. Now, I hear again, we're talking 2029. If he wins the election this fall, he will be president through the rest of this decade.
Yeah, no.
And this is somebody, quite frankly, who is in their last moments of any career. I don't care what it is. If he was flying airplanes right now, he wouldn't be qualified.
Oh no! And I would say to some Democrats, would you let him drive your children somewhere?
Yes.
Because if you wouldn't let him drive your children somewhere, what are you doing letting him drive the country? Like that's exactly. and giving fodder to our enemies, if you will. If you listen to Putin's most recent, it's,
and we're going to talk about that too. Vladimir Putin was in the news a couple of times, and one of which was saying, "Look what's happening to the United States." And the other thing was Kim Jong-un, and we're going to talk about it in just a moment. Speaking of this, everything is fine here. As you know, the week before we played some Anthony Fauci clips, and most notably Marjorie Taylor Greene, who went after him pretty good. There's a new, here again, nothing wrong here. Absolutely nothing wrong here. This is Anthony Fauci on, I believe it was Morning Joe. Here we go.
You know, it is quite frustrating, Joe, and that relates exactly to the answer to the question just a moment ago, where I was saying that people really don't appreciate. I don't blame them for that, but they don't appreciate that we were dealing with a moving target. And when we were saying things in the beginning, wear a mask or not, how the virus is spread. I mean, originally it was felt, understandably but incorrectly, by the CDC, that it is spread by the same way that flu is spread, namely mostly by droplets, when in fact most of the transmission is not only by not droplets, it's by aerosol, but also 50 to 60% of the people who transmit it have no symptoms at all. We didn't know that in the beginning. It was a changing, moving target. You're absolutely right. Was it frustrating? It was terribly frustrating because people like to take things out of context and do a gotcha. That's part of the reporting process. And I accept that. It's the world we live in, but it certainly is frustrating.
Yeah. First of all, for our listeners, check out The Real Anthony Fauci by RFK Jr. But let's stay with this. Nothing wrong here. Hey, we did the best we could. It was a moving target. The situation was evolving. Of course, I was listening to, and I know you follow healthcare. I was listening to some nurses talking in a little forum about how they had their lives, their livelihoods threatened. You know, they were the ones on the front line being exposed to this when we didn't know what it was. And then they were vilified for not taking the vaccine. And even
so-called vaccines.
Yes, and so-called, you are exactly right, because it's technically not a vaccine.
No, none of them ever were. That was another one of the huge delusions he pushed down everyone's throats.
Yeah, so people were under the threat of losing their jobs, and there's people who still haven't recovered from this. They have lost their jobs, they have lost their livelihoods. And oh hell, you know, we did the best we could. This is Nicole Shanahan, who is the vice presidential pick for RFK Jr. In response to the video that I just played, she says, "Oh yes, it must be terribly frustrating that Americans don't appreciate having their children masked, schools closed, businesses shuttered, family gatherings restricted, vaccines mandated. In Fauci's world, the citizens should just say please and thank you and do as they're told. Science be damned." That's the tweet from Nicole Shanahan. And that's just the beginning. The amount of pain and suffering that this caused within the business community, with people being at risk of losing their jobs, what parents had to go through with their school children. This was and the potential damage from these vaccines. Now, as Shaman alluded to, technically these are not vaccines. If you take a flu vaccine, the flu vaccine has flu in it. It's kind of how that works. With an mRNA type thing, which is what this is. It looks for spike proteins at different parts of your body, and it goes into your system, goes through your bloodstream, goes into the bone marrow, goes everywhere looking for these spike proteins. And if it finds them, it activates your system to essentially attack. Okay. And a lot can go wrong with this. There've been a lot of people that have autoimmune situations, allegedly. Here again, allegedly, we don't know. A lot of people have had blood clot issues. There's been a lot of people who apparently have been harmed by these vaccines. So it's just saying that, oh, well, you know, we're trying to hit a moving target. This was, if that's the case, if you didn't know what you were dealing with, then you shouldn't have been forcing stuff on people. Am I wrong about that, Shaman, or am I wrong?
Oh, the entire thing, you know, I write about this in New American Dream. The way that it was handled, a part of me actually wonders if it wasn't done just to mess with Trump and get him out of office. They were worried about losing control of the country, and I find the timing of it to be suspicious, and the Napoleonic behavior of several people who stepped into power positions and got really, like, that's what he's leaving out of that whole little speech of his, is what a dictator, little Hitler he was. And many like him, especially a lot of celebrities and a lot of people in positions of power, turned into dictators, telling the American people, as though we had no will and no choice, what to do. And the whole time it was going on, I knew that business would be shattered, relationships would be shattered, many things would be broken and never be able to be repaired again. And the whole time I was like, why are we not putting men and women on an island somewhere so we can, like, repopulate, just in case these pretend vaccines? don't work. But just to give people a little bit of a history lesson, when this was going on, I could not understand why mass media was not talking about thalidomide, because when I was a child, back in the 1960s, they developed a vaccine and they gave it to women, and they gave it to pregnant women, and the women had gave birth to some of the most horrifically deformed children. And I remember those children because I'm from that generation. And so when I was very, very young, a lot of them would pass away at very young ages. A few of them made it to college. And so when that happened, it was so appalling and so atrocious. The number of highly, we're talking fingers on feet and toes on arms. Like, it was really, really shocking. And so that is when they passed standards for what it qualifies as a vaccine. And when this whole thing was going on, and they suddenly magically overnight had vaccines for something they couldn't possibly, I mean, it takes like 10 years. And not one media person that I heard during the entire closures brought up thalidomide babies and the whole reason why vaccines had to meet a certain level of standard. So
Yeah.
whole thing is shocking, and I'm just glad that the truth is coming out, and I hope it empowers the American people never to roll over, because at the end of the day, we get the democracy we allow, and we allowed that situation to get where it did. Sure, were we being bossed around? Absolutely, but we're free people, and that should have never occurred.
Yeah, here again, this whole thing that I'm talking about with Biden and now with Fauci, the Democratic. It seems very apparent to me the new strategy is nothing happened here. This has all been overblown. And Anthony Fauci was on. I noticed the clip on Stephen Colbert, which is somebody I detest. I absolutely detest.
I'm just laughing at the fact that Fauci turned into a little bit of a celebrity. Who's loving that.
He's on there talking about, oh yeah, they're making me out to be this conspiracy guy. Oh, and everything's a joke. All right, here again, there's some really, really good books. And probably one of the premier ones would be the RFK Jr., The Real Anthony Fauci. Do check it out. And it's the book itself, I was going to show it. I don't have it handy here, but it has footnotes. It has references. I mean, it's a pretty tight book. RFK is, an attorney. He's a pretty sharp guy. So anyway, nothing wrong here.
The people who, I think that you will ultimately see this all come to light, and that I'm actually grateful for, because a couple of years ago I wasn't sure if we would ever have the truth be discussed, but I don't think they can avoid it because there's too much proof that there's something wrong with the vaccines. Anyway.
So interesting. Today is the 20th, and the reason that I say that, summer solstice officially. I know that everybody always thinks that the days get longer in summer, but actually starting today, they get shorter, and in our hemisphere anyway. And I enjoy summer. It's probably my favorite season. I absolutely hate winter. And this is what I was going to throw to you. Let me show this video while we're talking. Here again, there's no audio on this, so I'll just kind of a little bit of audio in the background there. People shouting. This is at Stonehenge, and these are protesters protesting oil. Okay, it's the Stop Oil movement, and they're spraying these ancient stones, these ancient relics. And it's I just this is idiotic. It really is. Now apparently this was some sort of a washable thing. This isn't like permanent paint. Two climate protesters who sprayed orange paint on the ancient Stonehenge monument in southern England were arrested Wednesday after bystanders appeared to intervene to stop them. It was the Stop Oil is the exact name of the of the organization. It was described as disgraceful act of vandalism. The site is 4,500 years old, and it's one of the places where people celebrate the summer solstice. And apparently the paint was made of cornstarch, and they said it would dissolve in the rain. I don't know if that's true, but that's what the Just Stop Oil movement said. Nonetheless, this is very much a part of spray painting paintings in museums, gluing yourself to works of art in some of these museums and other places. This has become the thing now for the stop oil movements, the climate change. Is this accomplishing anything, Shaman? Are people looking at this and saying, yeah,
No,
wow, the climate
I
change is really
honestly,
happening?
yeah, no, I actually think they do a lot more damage because they leave such a bad taste in people's mouths. It's like the boy who cried wolf. People can't hear anymore. And when you see someone, the contradiction of desecrating, and I don't care what they claim the paint was, when you physically run at an ancient sacred monument, one of the most sacred on the planet. It is now in summer solstice, and it's being, has tons of people there right now who are there to celebrate summer solstice. But when you run at that with metal, which is what those extinguishers or whatever you want to call them are, and you violate this ancient sacred monument, you care more about getting attention than you care about actually affecting real change, because I don't believe that something like that people can even hear what you're talking about. Like, no one's talking about the stop oil, they're talking about the idiots that took a risk at damaging, and we don't know. And that's stupid to assume that you're not damaging it, because they're assuming the paint isn't going to do anything. They're assuming that the cleaning of the paint on those ancient stones isn't going to do any damage, or that it won't. It's just nuts. And I frankly feel like they should go to prison or jail or something serious, because we can't allow people to continue. Look, I'm all for protesting, but this was outrageous. And it's an insult to all of the people who they knew. They purposely timed that with the summer solstice. It's an insult to the thousands of people who go to Stonehenge.
The significance of the spirituality of this. Do you want to share just a little bit of that? Because that's something I don't necessarily tune into, but I know that it means a lot to a lot of people, and this is hurtful to them.
Yeah, it is. I think that's one of the reasons why it's so stupid, is because the people who actually care about the planet, and what the word witch has been really ruined over time. They're really people whose religion is nature. And so you're talking about tens of thousands of people going to a monument who love nature and they love the planet. And you're damaging something or risking serious damage to something right before their celebration. And it's like violating the church, the cross on the church where the ceremony is going to take place. It's just insulting. And here we are not talking about oil. That's why I say this has never been about oil. It's been about somebody's ego.
Yeah. This is a common theme that you'll often hear me say in regard to marketing. When you pull some kind of a stunt, whether it's burning a flag or whatever, you have to be very careful that your provocative action doesn't overtake the cause that you're trying to take up. And that's a very thin line to walk. And this is a perfect example of that people just look at this as a couple of nutcases spray painting an ancient monument. We mentioned Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. On Wednesday, they signed a treaty, and this is a mutual defense pact. And foreign governments expressed concern about a treaty between Russia and North Korea that commits to the two countries providing military assistance to each other if either of them is invaded.
I'm sorry, but will Kim remember or stay? Because I just don't. I don't trust him as far as I can throw his little chubby butt.
He's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, it's more for ceremony, I think, than anything. We did something happened this last week. I can't recall, that had to do with affecting Russia with new sanctions. I think that's what he's flexing. Putin's he's using Kim to flex.
It's scary in the idea that any kind of an agreement between them, and especially with Kim Jong-un being very unstable, you don't know what that's going to spark. And I mentioned this as a backdrop to my next mention. In the midst of all this talk about cheap fakes and deep fakes and all this other kind of crap, during this last week or so, I believe it was the House, they passed a measure that essentially would automatically enroll 18 to 26-year-old. I'm not sure if it's just men or if it's or if I'm going to say the door is open to women as well. It used to be that you had to manually register for the draft, like I did years ago. I believe I went to the post office when I was 18 years old and registered for the Selective Service.
That was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago. If they, I got to tell you, if they feel the need to draft me, we're in big trouble.
Hey, they do have some program for older people to join the military. They get
I know. I wouldn't necessarily rule it out. I wouldn't. If the country was really being threatened, I wouldn't necessarily rule it out. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying, it used to be that you had to, and it still is, that you manually have to register for the Selective Service. What this measure does is it automatically 18 to 26 from the other government databases, and I never really understood it. It's not like the government doesn't know who you are. They're automatically going to put you into the Selective Service. Now, it still has to go through the Senate, I believe, and of course, sometimes it can get modified, so we don't know. But I can tell you that there is wider talk of bringing back the draft. So in light of what's happening in Ukraine, in light of what's happening in the Middle East, in light of what's happening, with Kim Jong-un, I'm going to play this clip for you right here. And if you're ready to have your son or daughter drafted into the military, this is the person that's going to send them into harm's way.
I was a Congress and Homeland Security Secretary. I'm not sure going to introduce you all the way. But all kidding aside, Secretary Moore.
Now, if you're okay with that,
I'm sorry.
Sorry. If you're okay with that, then you vote for him. That's all I can tell you. And here again, this isn't about Trump. I get so sick. Well, what about Trump? What about Trump? What about Trump? That's the guy the Democrats say there's absolutely nothing wrong with him and that everything is a fabrication. And there's the talk of the draft coming back. Okay. And that's for a lot of reasons. Number one, the military is going through a bad time right now in terms of its population.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that a major conflict could happen if you are denying yourself that, although nobody's ever going to do anything in the United States. You are living in a fantasy land. You are living in an absolute fantasy land. I've talked about this before. I'm not going to go into detail about it again tonight, but there's people out there, terrorists in particular, whose wet dream it is to blow something up in the United States, and a nuclear device would be their absolute wet dream extraordinaire. And defending that is becoming more and more of a concern, and it's not just my opinion. The FBI and other people have all stated, with the open borders and everything else that's going on. And by the way, that's that guy there, the guy I just played, the open borders. That's that guy right there.
He was trying to pad his voting pool.
Yeah, he's 8 million people. And here again, this isn't hatred. The analogy that I heard,
it's facts.
The analogy I heard is you lock your door at night, not because you hate everybody in the world. It's just that before you let somebody in your house, you want to know who they are. Well, we let 8 million people in the front door. We don't know who they are. We had this terrorist group that was recently captured within a week or so ago. There was 8 of them. And the FBI and other intelligence, they've all stated we're at the highest risk now that we have been since 9/11. And that person that was just on the screen is responsible for your safety. And if we have to, start the draft again, that person right there is going to be the person marching your sons and daughters into harm's way. And if you're going to honestly tell me that that's the best that the Democrats got, then I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah,
I honestly
don't think that Biden has been running the show. I don't think many of our presidents. I mean, Trump is a different story, but I think many of our presidents have people really pulling their strings.
Yeah. So this idea that nothing's wrong here, Everything is just fine. It's not going to. It's not going to wash with me.
No, it's
And
going
I
to kill
would-
their. It's going to kill their chances of re-winning the House again, the White House again.
Yeah.
It will if they continue to lie like this. I think it's just going to. Even some of the Democrats that have been quiet are going to shift over because they can't. They just can't rationalize the lying anymore. You'll have
It's a
some
sco-
diehards like the Rachel Maddows of the world
Oh,
who's like delusional. It's
Yeah, and it really got me too. Somebody on The View was, if Trump gets elected, he might cancel us. So in other words, you're saying that the government might get involved in censorship and doing things that wouldn't that be? Where did they ever get
amazing.
that
But you were
idea?
okay with it during the coronavirus.
I'll go okay with it then, and okay with the Twitter files. And hey, Matt Taibbi would be another person to check out on the Twitter files if you really want to. If you think that this is something that is going to happen under Trump, you have no idea what's already happened.
Well, she doesn't care because it's about things that she thinks people should be snooping about. That's the thing about a lot of liberals, and I'm middle of the road, but a lot of liberals, they're okay with and this is the whole thing with President Trump and what happened with him. They were okay with doing that to him because the arrogance and the belief in what they think they're doing overrides their understanding of the long-term impact. And now they're smelling the long-term impact.
Yeah. Fun times. Okay. Next week, I have to double check the times on this, but I believe the presidential debate is Thursday, and I believe it's at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If that's the case, we should be able to come on here at 8 during our normal time. And unless there's a change, there's an interesting thing happening with RFK. A lot of people think that he should be in and that he qualifies now because of the rankings. And if he doesn't get in on this, there's apparently some sort of a sit-in that they're going to do outside the studios of CNN, saying that, RFK. I do believe that RFK should be a part of this debate.
Oh, I completely agree. It's absurd
he's got too many,
that he isn't.
He's got a lot of important things to say. Mm-hmm. So Shaman and I will be covering that next week. I'll leave you on a high note. On a funny note, anyway, this video went viral. A young lady was asked, "What do you do, for a man to really get him going in bed?" And this was her answer. Here we go.
You gotta give him that huck too and spit on that thing. You get me?
That's a great.
Well, she's speaking the truth.
She knows how to keep guys happy. I'll give her that. But anyway, and the way she does that, I think that's there's a cuteness in the way she articulates that.
Yeah.
That twing. It's
that
just
southern,
funny.
that spit on that thing.
Yeah.
The southern thing.
It's funny. So every once in a while, the internet gives us a little gem like that. Hey, I'll tell you what, your promo, do you want me to run that real quick?
Sure, why not?
Okay, sure. This is Shaman's promo, and for the audio listeners, she does a great voiceover on this. This is our friend Shaman right here.
I've always thought of the American dream as the heart and soul of the country. Boy, has our soul taken a beating in recent years. Things are a bit of a mess. I thought after the closures that the corporations would step up to take care of people, but what we've seen is a shocking level of greed and corruption. It's crushed the middle class, decimated the lower classes, and brought people to their knees. And rightfully, they're angry. But you know what? We stand on the edge of the age of AI, an industrial revolution that we can actually get in front of. We can engineer and design a new America through intelligent and strategic use of technology. I truly believe that is the way forward. It is the way to provide hope to our younger generations and to reignite the American dream.
There's our friend Shaman. Great voice. I just love that voiceover. You speak that so well, so expressively.
Thank you.
Yeah,
that's in my name, my given name, Cynthia Elliott. that book, and I'm excited about it. I have an event at New House on July 2nd from 6 to 8 p.m. to celebrate the book and to do an interview about what the book is about. So I'm excited about that.
And you should be. Is there anything else? Where can people find you online, Shaman?
They can find me on soultechfoundation.org and shamanisis.com. And of course, I'm on all the social media platforms like X under @Shamanisis.
That is absolutely fantastic. My name is Billy Dees. You can find me on X. That's kind of like my social media home at Billy Dees, but I'm pretty much on all the major podcast platform, social media platforms, not on all of them. We do have the Billy Dees Facebook page, Billy Dees Podcast Facebook page, and there's a couple of other things. X is primarily where I'm at as far as social media goes. When it comes to podcast platforms, we are on all of them. I mean, all the major podcast platforms, we are on them all. So you can check out our entire playlist. We have a number of different types of content. We have this type of content here that you've been listening to. I also do solo commentaries. I also do interviews with authors, with advocates, people who have been through traumatic events. There's a very diversified set of content in my playlist. So feel free to pick a few and enjoy them. Anywhere you find the Billy Dees podcast, you will find the entire playlist. So with that being said, Shaman, parting words until next week.
Have an amazing weekend. It's going to be a hot one.
Yes, it's going to be hot. I actually like hot weather, and I don't want anybody to get sick from it. But obviously, I had frostbite many years ago, and I always swore I would never complain about the heat again. So I'm going to get out in it, get some rays, get some vitamin D. Carefully, of course. And enjoy it. And I would tell people to do the same thing. Have a safe and enjoyable weekend. Enjoy your week. Keep tabs on what Billy Dees and Shamanisis are doing, because we got stuff going on all the time. And don't forget, we'll be back next week. Thank you very much for listening.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Billy Dees podcast. Follow Billy Dees on X @Billy Dees for updates about the program.